Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of the Podium. I'm your host, Caleb Robbins. Alongside me is my good friend and co-host and birthday man, Seth Stein. Seth, what's going on?
Thank you, Coby. Not much.
I'm really excited for the podcast. We're going to be talking about press conferences, reporters, some things that coaches have said, controversial. Let's get into it. So to start off, we know that Tua had an awful injury, concussion.
Very awful.
What do you think is his future?
I know me and you've talked about it a few times already, but I think the consensus from the NFL community is that he should probably retire. Although his career is only a few years young, for his safety, I believe that he should retire, and maybe he becomes a coach alongside Mike McDaniel on the sideline. So,
yeah, I agree, and it was so interesting because the media really had the notion that he was going to retire and we should focus on his long-term health, and I agree, but I feel like we should be focusing on the person and just getting better right now.
I agree.
And that's something that Mike McDaniel said, and I think that we should take a look at what he said in the press conference after the game.
I just really wish, I totally understand it, and it's not misplaced. I totally get how that's where people want to go to. I just wish that people would for a second hear what I'm saying, that bringing up his future is not in the best interest of him.
Well, Coach McDaniel said they need to focus on the human being and not his future, which I do agree. I mean, this goes for any human, like, who's suffering through, like, any, injury of any kind. Like, you just want them to be better. You want them emotionally, physically, mentally just to be, stable. So, I mean, like, McDaniels has proved to be a very close and straight-up coach, and I think he, was right on the dot here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it really shows what type of coach he is. You may get a coach that's hard on the players, that's nice to the players, but I think he does everything. And I think that that's regarding to Tua and the whole team. And just for him to come out and say, I understand you guys are media, but we need to focus on his health and just how he's doing with his family and just focus on who he is, really just exemplifies what the Miami Dolphins organization really wants. I think that they've been a good organization for a long time. Haven't really won, but Mike McDaniel shows excitement and care for the players.
Yeah, they're not showing that, they just want to throw him back in there to maybe one day this same injury that's happened already multiple times over the last year now to happen again. And it just shows the care that he has for his players and the whole entire team.
And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about Mike McDaniel. And I know I'm focusing on this a lot. He's an incredible person. Just seeing what he does and how he kissed Tua on the forehead after he went into the locker room. I mean, no coach is going to do that.
It shows, the leadership that he gives to his players, and it shows, how much he cares. And, you don't see that on the field very much with coaches. Coaches like to be, tough. They like to be hard on you. But, at the end of the day, deep down, they do care about you. And, you see it when he kissed Tua on the forehead.
Yeah, and I think that we should preview a bit of the season for the Miami Dolphins. They now have Skylar Thompson as their quarterback, aren't looking to get a veteran. What do you think they're going to be able to do without Tua on the field?
Personally, I believe that they should go get Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. I think those are, I'm not saying, Zach Wilson's the best leadership guy, but I think he can play that role a little better than Thompson can. And I believe, if Justin Fields doesn't work out in Pittsburgh, I think that he can be lethal with Tyreek, Waddle, and, their other guns.
I think in the NFL and football in general, injuries happen. And it's unfortunate, it's awful and tragic, but you can't have a wasted season. And what I'm worried about for the Dolphins is I see a team like the Jets last year losing Aaron Rodgers. They went with Zach Wilson and didn't have another answer. And you can't put yourself in that position. And even if you get a Mac Jones or someone who's decent or even regarded as bad in other situations, they have all the talent in the world. One of the best offensive lines, Terron Armstead.
One of the best receiving corps in the league.
Amazing receiving corps and pretty ferocious D. If you have a decent quarterback, you're going to get 10 wins. I think we should move on to IU football. We're really
yeah.
excited about it. Before we get into what Coach Sig said, how are we feeling about the 3-0 start?
The Hoosiers are back. Personally, I haven't seen Hoosier football this good since Michael Penix was here. And, I come from Columbus, so I've seen Big Ten football my whole life. And I can't say that I've seen the Hoosiers play this well before.
Yeah, it's been amazing coming from Tom Allen to Coach Signetti. And I feel like during that Maryland game last year, when he said to the crowd how all these other Big Ten teams suck, like Michigan, Ohio State, and it kind of set a tone. And many people called him crazy, but he came in with the expectation of winning. And if they don't win, he's going to be pissed at himself, pissed at the players.
The hype is showing. There was so much talk about, whether we get even 3 wins, we'd win week 1, week 2, to even be able to beat UCLA, their first Big Ten opponent. They accomplished something, and they really, kicked butt.
So I think now's a good time to take a look and listen to what Coach Signetti said after the win in Pasadena against UCLA.
Aren't rattled. I do. And Coach Haynes, hey, it's over. Play next play, okay? And not only the guys on the field, the guys on the sideline. So there's not frustration on the sideline. And sometimes I got to get on the coaches to make sure there's not frustration. It's over. It's happened. May not agree with it. I'm sure there's quite a few I don't agree with. But you got to get ready to play the next play so it doesn't snowball on you.
Very interesting. Seth, what do we think about it?
Well, I agree with them. It's a good win. They was 42-13, yeah. I watched the whole second half, and they just, dominated. And I haven't seen a better offensive, game than they were just showing there. I agree. You celebrate a win for the first 24 hours, but, you got to get right back to work when you get back to Bloomington. Their grind does not stop. The football team works hard every day. And, they got a big game against Charlotte this weekend. So,
yeah, I agree. And it's so simple for a coach to say, cherish the win and let's move on. But do they actually action that to their plan? And I think that's the main question. You're 3-0, going into a game with Charlotte, which you should win. They're 20.5-point favorites. But it's a rough schedule coming up. And I think that the demeanor that Coach Signetti has on the stand when he also, after this comment, talked about flags and penalties, how he's upset, but his players have to keep their composure, and it's unacceptable. It kind of reminds me, and I don't know if you remember this, Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide were up 56-7 in the game against UTSA a couple years ago, and there was a penalty, and they were up by 50, game is over, 7 seconds left, but he was pissed. And I think that, I think there's constructive criticism that really allows these players to fulfill their expectations and their ultimate potential.
I agree. If, say, you were on the field and I was the coach, you did something in the last 10 seconds or at any point in the game and we're, winning by a landslide, I wouldn't be happy. It's still a learning lesson no matter what the score is, and you got to be better, and you just got to keep your composure.
Yeah, and I think that even though some could say, yes, he's bringing this hard-nosed mentality to Indiana football, he's still caring about the players.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just a different coach, and I think that shows similarities but also differences between Mike McDaniel and Coach Signetti. And when Coach Signetti came here, he was asked, how do you get recruits to come to IU? Always said, look me up, I win. I feel like, for me, that's an incredible quote and a great statement. What do you think about that?
I agree. If you're saying, look me up, I win, that just shows your confidence and it shows how good of a coach you can be. And, the fact that you are consistently winning, no matter where you are, who's at JMU before, not saying, they're a terrible program, but, being able to, complete seasons with wins and over again is something to be proud of. And I think he proudly said that confidently.
And talking about the UCLA game, UCLA is a new Big Ten team. And I didn't really think about this, but there's going to be travel.
Oh, yeah.
USC, UCLA, Washington. Oregon, you're right.
Washington, too.
What do we think about how that's going to change the game plan and how these players are tired or in different time zones, because that's something that NFL players do or professional players. Never happened before in collegiate athletics.
It's like, players train when they go to Denver. I mean, I'm sure other schools do this when they go to colleges in Denver, but like specifically the Broncos, like that's, atmosphere is different. You're a mile up. Oxygen levels are different. I'm sure it's very similar when you go out to somewhere in California, Washington, or Oregon, because, they're in the mountains. It's not easy, and you got to prepare for yourself the noise. Oregon and Washington, crazy crowds. It's loud there. And even playing at the Rose Bowl, like, that's a big stage to play on. So I think whatever they did over the last 2 weeks to prepare for that, they did perfectly.
Yeah, and the scoring output has been surprising. I mean, I thought Indiana would have an opportunity this year, maybe get a bowl game with 6 or 7 wins, but they've been consistently scoring 40, even 70 points in a game against, maybe it's lesser teams, but that's still college football.
If I read it right the other day, it was about 24 point something percent that, we're in the playoff. I'm not saying, that's going to happen or anything, but that's higher than some big schools right now. Like, have a better percentage than Michigan, and that's saying something. That's the defending champs right there. And the fact that we can, prove that, we're not even ranked yet. And the fact that we can prove that we are good is just keep winning. And I think they can do that. And I think they're going to go into these other Big Ten schools and, show them this isn't the same team that we saw last year. This is a wiped and a new team ready to go.
And I feel like many Indiana news outlets are definitely overreacting to the 3-0 start, which is probably what we're doing here. But I think it's important to recognize that I'm 100% confident in Coach Signetti and their staff, and Mike Shanahan. And I think that getting a coach who understands the program, who understands that Indiana has not been the most successful football program, really was an interesting decision. Because I think in college, as opposed to the NFL, you don't go for a young or a veteran head coach. You go for what the program wants. And I think that they really, truly struck gold on someone that was at JMU, consistently won. And yes, maybe there were other opportunities out there, but I think it's perfect for him. He wants to prove someone wrong. He wants to show just everyone that he consistently wins. And for him to come to the Big Ten with a lesser program, that's perfect for him.
I fully agree with you, Coby.
I feel like it's a good time to move on to Caleb Williams. Before we get into it, how do we think it's done so far?
2 games. Am I right about 0 passing touchdowns?
Yeah.
So I've always had the stigma in college, he's great. Don't think he's a terrible quarterback. Slightly overrated, in my opinion. I get the hype. I understand, he's like the next, I don't even know, I don't know who his comparison is to, but I know he's like, that next guy. And with a whole team that is also looking to restart, I understand why he's struggling right now. And it's kind of, his starting is similar to what it looked like for Justin Fields when he got drafted and started in Chicago. I think it's going to take time. I think halfway through the season, they're going to figure it out. And I think he's going to be able to start, kickstart that season for him. And it just takes time. He's a rookie. Obviously, he's not going to, be all-star level immediately. That takes time to do that. And I think they're at a good pace right now. They won their first game. I know he didn't really, do too much to have them win that game. But again, football is more than just the QB. It's everyone. And so I think so far he's fine. But even on the topic of Caleb Williams, before we go back to the Bears, recently USC announced that they are retiring his number. I believe that they shouldn't have done that because I think if I was right, he only went 8-5 the whole time at school. I don't think that's enough games to decide if someone is great enough to be retired. Tom Brady, for instance, I understand that. I can understand why Michigan would want to do that. Tom Brady is the greatest football player of all time. I think it's safe to say, Caleb Williams is going to be great, but I don't think that it's the right amount of games to decide that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And another topic about that is he's only a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these players, when they're retired or they're into year 10, year 11, year 12, get their numbers retired by their respective colleges. And especially for him not playing so well right now, probably a lack of confidence. Yes, it will be good for him to be recognized, but it can also be false confidence. Because I think for him, I would say that at times he's cocky, but at times it seems like he's down. And I think he has to find that really balance. Because you can see him in press conferences, which we'll take a look at in a second, that he really does get mad at himself, which is a good thing and bad thing. And I think as a quarterback, you need to understand, yes, it's on you. You're the leader. You're the focal point of the offense. But there's still a lot of things that need to work for you to be successful. And I think that he really puts a lot on himself. And I hope that doesn't detriment his play in the future. Because, and we can take a look right now about what he said in postgame.
You know, we didn't execute the way we needed to. And, you know, we're going to keep getting better. Everything's about the responses. You know, it's week 2. It's what the guys are. Obviously, I'm, you know, a young guy. But I understand it's a long season. Understanding that it's week 2. Understanding that we're going to respond. And, you know, just get better every day.
I feel like as I was saying, he was talking about, yes, he's a young player. There's a lot of things to work on. But he also previously mentioned that it's on me. And while I do think that that's a good comment, you can see really by the way his body language especially that he truly believes that and he needs to be better. But also his situation is not good. And many people may talk about the talent. But one thing I will say, and I don't call this a hot take, their communication between him and the offensive line was the worst I've ever seen.
I agree.
The worst.
It was terrible. I agree. I think that it's on me part is great motivation for himself. I mean, I know we are both former high school athletes, and you know we both were leaders in those sports. At the end of the day, like he is a captain. He's a leader, but at the same time, it's not just him. Again, football is more than just one person, and I think it's more that the team needs to learn how to communicate better. Parts of it can be on him. Some drives might be his fault. He might not be, throwing it well. He might not be making the right play calls. He's still learning, and he's right. He's young. This is what happens when you're a rookie. You're not going to be amazing right away. It takes time, and it takes a lot of practice.
And I feel like these rookies obviously expect greatness. If you're a top 10, especially number 1 overall pick, you were there for a reason. You won, and you were the best player in the field. That isn't really a question. And now you go to the NFL, where your team may not be as talented, different coaching. Players are all ferocious and talented, and every single NFL player, whether they're on the practice squad or a free agent, is great. Some are better than others, but they're all great. And I think that it's going to be such adjustment. And even though I was talking about the negative, I think that when he said it is still the beginning of the season, he truly understands the time and place. He knows that, yes, there's a lot to work on, but they're only 0-2. The division is looking pretty good right now, but the NFC traditionally does not have these star quarterbacks. And if you can be one of them, you're probably going to be a top team in the NFC.
Yeah.
We can move on to what Brian Callahan said, the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. He was talking about what Will Levis said, and before we take a look at it, what do we think about the Titans so far with this 0-2 start?
Well, I mean, I'm a Bengals fan. We're 0-2. It's just motivation to, get that first win, and then from there, consistently play well. Sometimes it's hard to, get a win right away. I know they, blew it to the Bears the first game. They were up, I think, 17-0 if I'm right. That itself, is kind of a dagger, blowing a lead by, more than 3 possessions. It's tough. But I think it's more than just Will Levis. Again, football is a team sport. And yes, the quarterback is like the lead of communication, at least for the offense. I think the Titans are playing fine. I don't think it's something that they don't look like, what the Bears looked like last year. They don't look like that. They have connections. Pollard is playing, great running. I think they just need to get it together. I think they need to take time, practice, and work on communication, similar to what the Bears need to do. I think they have the pieces to play well and be a last second team in the playoffs. I think it's going to be a slow process though for them.
And top off that, let's take a listen to what head coach Brian Catlin said.
I think the camera caught it pretty clear, if I had to guess. So, I was upset. It was dumb. It was the same exact thing he did last week, and he cost us points in the red zone. And that is what it is. He's a grown-up, and he knows better. And so, I was really irritated that he cost us 3 points in a game that we probably needed it.
I think that some may see this and automatically be out on him, and I understand that. But I feel like, in a way, I agree with him. When he said it was dumb, he's a grown-up, and he knows better. That's basically telling your quarterback, you have to make these plays. And if people don't know what he's talking about how, pretty sure it was the second quarter early on in the game, Will Levis and the Titans were driving around the 15-yard line, and he tossed it to running back behind him when he's about to get sacked. Complete lateral, complete fumble, and the Jets get the ball. And especially in a 17-24 loss, when they also had the ball late in the game, that really is a difference between a win and a loss.
I'd agree. I don't think it's proper to say, he's a grown-up. Those are all grown men on the field. Yes, he does know better. He's been a quarterback for probably his whole time playing football. And yes, it was dumb. But I don't think it's fair to say, he's a grown-up, he should know better. I think, he's been playing this game for so long and he knows better not to do that or just take the sack. So those are my opinions on the comments.
Yeah, and I think the question is, does he have the authority, the respect to say that? And I'm not so sure. Yes, he's a head coach, but he's inexperienced, he's young, and he hasn't won a game yet. And you can put it on the players, but ultimately the coach needs to set up a good game plan for them to win. However, Will Levis has done this in back-to-back weeks. Something he's going to have to work on, especially with a team like the Titans. If Will Levis is not the answer, they're going to pick a quarterback in next draft.
Oh, yeah.
So what do we think? We already talked about how the Titans have done, but in terms of an overall quarterback to head coach relationship, what does that need to look like?
I mean, I think that's one of the most important things about football itself because, the QB for most teams represents the whole teams. Mahomes represents the Chiefs. Burrow represents the Bengals. Rodgers represents the Jets. And it's something like that. You need someone. Will Levis is a known name, but he hasn't done anything remarkable to the point where, I would say he is that face of the Titans team at this moment. And I think there needs to be a little maturity in the team itself, and I think there needs to be growth between the coach and the quarterback.
And I know we may not have a video or an audio recording of this, but I think we should talk about one of the most pressing issues in the league right now, which is putting quarterbacks in early. And I think that Tom Brady said it best. If you have a rookie quarterback, don't just put him in and let him do his thing.
But this is what the Patriots are doing. They're not starting Drake May. And I think it was smart. I think Jacoby Brissett is an outstanding quarterback. Obviously, he's had a long career and he's been on many teams. But I think he was the right choice it's a leadership thing. He's a veteran and, he can teach these young guys how to play. And I think it's good because at some point in the season, there might be a need to change. And I think at that point, say it's week 6, week 10, I think Drake May can get in there. And I think he can do it. And I think it's important to have the rookie learn from someone. I mean, just like Tom Brady, he didn't start right away. He was backup. And, it takes time. It's not going to be your job to get in there right away. Trevor Lawrence was a little different situation down in Jacksonville. He was kind of in that same position of Caleb Williams, where you're kind of the chosen one in some type of way and just kind of being thrown in there. Justin Fields was like that. Joe Burrow was like that as well, coming in right after Andy Dalton's departure for the Bengals. But I think there needs to be a better solution than just letting this young guy learn, because if they're not going to play for 6 weeks or 10 weeks or more than that right away, it's hard to even get, practice in there. Like sometimes I don't even believe like practicing with your teams enough. I think playing at the other team. So like maybe letting them play for like a drive or two, maybe 3 drives. I think that's the only way teams with young quarterbacks can get better, is letting them get out there.
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned outliers. There's a lot of reports about Bryce Young and quarterbacks in the past that have not worked out. Of course, there's C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, who we're still kind of iffy on, which we could mention later on, Joe Burrow. And I think that when you mention the Patriots situation, if they put in Drake May in Week 10, doesn't play the best, he has 7 more weeks, maybe he plays decent, learns the offense, you go into the whole offseason, new team, revamped offensive line most likely, coaching staff is more familiar with the players, you go into next year. Not the worst thing. The problem is, though, with Bryce Young, or especially a Bo Nix, he starts weeks 1 and 2. Unfortunately, he does not look great. Can you keep him in for the rest of the season? What do you think for the Broncos?
Well, I haven't really been focusing too much out what's going on out in Denver, but I can comment on the Bryce Young thing. As earlier this week, it was announced that Andy Dalton is going to start this week, and they're going to bench Bryce Young. I think it was a good move because we saw all of last season. Bryce Young struggled. It's not all his fault. I'm not putting that blame on him. Carolina as a whole team needs to be better. And I don't think he has those people there to make him as good as he can be. I do think Andy Dalton is a good choice to put in there for maybe a few weeks. Bryce Young, kind of recovers. He takes hard hits every game. He's kind of a smaller build than most quarterbacks. He's tiny too. I think it will better him. Maybe, some motivation will get in his head and he'll be like, I need to do better. I need to be better. With Bo Nix, I don't really know how the Broncos have been playing. They had a close game against Pittsburgh this past week, right? I didn't really pay too much attention out there, but if you would like to comment on Bo Nix, I'd love to hear it.
I think that, in no shade to Sean Payton, he infuriates me, to be honest. I think that people call him an offensive guru, won Super Bowl, probably 4 divisions with Drew Brees, not that successful in the playoffs. And then what he did with Russell Wilson last year. I understand, maybe Russell Wilson, some could call him washed or past his prime, which he probably is. But they had an opportunity to make the playoffs.
They did. And putting Jarrett Stidham, who I love because I'm a Patriots fan, but it wasn't the right move for a winning team. Clearly, it was a tank move, even though it didn't really change their draft pick position that much. Then you have Bo Nix, who's a pro-ready quarterback. But you have Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham ready to compete. And I understand those are not veterans or guys that have been in the league 10, 12 years. But in my opinion, I think it's better to put in a quarterback that knows the offense, knows a bit of what they're doing, even if they won't win, game manager, and then you put in Bo Nix. Because I understand he's pro-ready, but the cons outweigh the pros by a long shot. Because I'm so nervous about what the Broncos are going to do. Because he's had 2 weeks of getting hit, not really understanding what to do as an NFL quarterback, and can you really keep him in there? The problem is, though, if you take him out, his confidence is lost. I agree. It's a lot I don't think Bo Nix is very young. He's quite actually older for a rookie quarterback. I think he's 25 or 26. Like most quarterbacks going in, either 19, 20, or 21. He's experienced, and I don't know if the confidence part is going to, make him whatever. This is, what you're describing is very similar to what it was like when he was at Auburn. And he struggled there. Even though Auburn was a pretty okay team, I do remember watching the Alabama-Auburn game that year. And I remember him getting bull-chucked. He struggled, but, Alabama's Alabama. That's a hard team to stop no matter what game it is. And when he went to Oregon, he showed up, he showed there and was like, I'm going to be the guy. We're going to go far. Look what they did last year and the years before. They looked good. I think he shaped Oregon's whole program around. And I think he could do that in Denver. Again, it takes time. it's a whole different game. College is very different than pros. But I do think it could affect his confidence, but I don't think it will that much because I think he's a veteran rookie. I think he knows what he's going into.
I think that's a great point what you mentioned. He's 25, and I didn't really think about that because if he does get benched, he's been in all these situations before where they've been tossed out in Auburn and then in a phenomenal couple years in Oregon. So maybe it won't even be that detrimental to his confidence. And you mentioned Bryce Young earlier, and I think that the thing that really is interesting to me is they put him in last year, had Andy Dalton, a lot of head coach turnover, GM turnover, team turnover, and many people will say it's the offensive line. To be honest, last game the offensive line looked pretty good based on how they've looked the last couple of years, but it's his confidence. And just like tennis is a mental game, football is a mental game.
I mean, you actually have had the chance to go watch the Panthers play live in this past year. What do you believe can change from what you witnessed live to what we are seeing for this first 2 weeks?
I think I witnessed really mentally what I mentioned, but also the crowd. It was unfortunate and sad for me to see no Panthers fans at the game. It was Christmas Eve, and Packers fans were filling the stadium. And Pack Nation's amazing. They go everywhere. Kudos to them. But it showed a lack of excitement and interest in the team. And I think that it's important for David Tepper, the owner, and Coach Dave Canales and the whole organization to bring back that excitement for the city because they didn't win a Super Bowl with Cam Newton, but he was electrifying.
I agree. And I think, I'm a big believer that fans are a big impact on a team. I mean, I come from a very small private school where, I was the baseball guy. And I was the one going out of my way to get parents to come there. I understand, these games are at 5 or even 6 p.m. at night, but that helps your child. It helps your players, like of your team that you're cheering for, to play better because it gives them motivation. Like the crowd hypes up the players. You go to Texas A&M, they walk out to Power by Kanye West. That's electrifying right there. That will amp up the fans. That amps up the players. And I see this on Twitter all the time. There's no fans at Panthers games. It's really sad. I see that you can buy tickets for less than $5. I think that's absurd, especially for such a big market like the NFL. You can expect that in different sports, but the NFL is very shocking that this is even happening. And I understand they're not very good. My whole life until the last 3 years, the Bengals were never good. So I know what it's like to root for a team that isn't the best. It's a long process, but at some point it'll be worth you going to those games when no one was there. And you can say, yeah, I've been a fan for them since this moment.
And I think fan culture is one of the things that I'm learning in one of my classes, and it's really interesting to look at. As you mentioned, practically your whole life, Bengals were bottom of the league, picking 1 and 2 and 3 every single year. And I think that's very different from what I've experienced. I'm a Patriots fan, always expected success. And I've told my friends the last couple of years, even though they've lost a lot, been a lot of controversy between Kraft, Brady, Belichick, that kind of thing, I've enjoyed being a fan more because I'm interested in every play, every training camp, every preseason, every game, because they're not just going to go 13 and 3 or 12 and 4. When Brady was there, because they were so dominant, if they lost a couple games, I thought it was the end of the world because we already knew they were going to the playoffs. We already probably knew that they were going to the conference championship game. So it was always really concerning when they lost because I always thought that they were the better team. And I think, how you asked me about what I thought about the game, the Packers-Panthers, on the field especially, Bryce Young looked confident, and he threw darts. And people don't talk about Adam Thielen enough. I also enjoyed one of his comments.
He looked frustrated after last week.
He did.
I think I saw a video of him throwing his helmet across the sideline last week. And, it's frustrating to see, such a, star like he is get upset. You know, he went out of his way to leave Minnesota to go to Carolina. And I'm not going to, like, this is a direct quote, but I do remember him saying something like, you know, I want to build this team up and I want to be successful there and I want the team to be successful. And I think that's exactly what you want in any sport athlete, because it shows that they care and there's a reason. And just like, and I'm a big hockey guy, so there's a lot of people, and the Blue Jackets aren't the best, but there's players, you know, that want to come to Columbus because Columbus is a great atmosphere. They're known to have a great fan base, and like the city wants these types of players. Any city would want a player like that. I want anyone to come, you know, I would love any 4 or 5 3-star athlete to come here and be like, I want to play for Bloomington. Like, there's a reason why I want to be here, and it's because of that. And I think it's important. But you said something similar or familiar earlier about, I think Patrick Mahomes or something like that about, it was about Tom Brady and how, you know, successful the Patriots have been from your childhood till now. I think, like, obviously now, you know, our two teams reversed roles. I think the Bengals are a top team in the league. Patriots are obviously a bottom team. And obviously, with time, that happens. But I think, like last week against the Chiefs, like, you know, not every week you're going to win, even though you deserve to win. I think the Bengals deserved to win last week against the Chiefs in a 1 or 2 point game. The Bengals held Patrick Mahomes, I think, to less than 5 targets beyond the line of scrimmage, past 15 yards. I think that's amazing for someone, you know, who throws, you know, down the field like Patrick Mahomes does, or, you know, scrambles the way he does. To hold him like that is crazy. And like you saw Cam Taylor-Britt's one-handed interception last week. That's the type of stuff that like these teams are looking for, and the success shows because of that. And I think the Bengals, you know, earned a win, but they didn't earn that win. And it comes down to, like, you know, again, what we talked about earlier, like communication throughout the whole team. And that the last drive that the Chiefs had, that, you know, the Anthony pass interference, defensive pass interference was called, you know, obviously kind of cost the game. At the same time, yes, the defender has the opportunity to jump up and block or try to, you know, get the ball not to go into the receiver. You just gotta time it better. Obviously, like, you know, this is exciting, but at the end of the day, with the Chiefs, we know some interesting thing is going to happen. And at the end of the day, people on social media are going to say it was the refs. Not saying, you know, that was the refs, but on that same play, there were 2 Chiefs players holding one of the defensive ends on the Bengals. So I do believe, like, officiating needs to be better.
And I think it's interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned the Bengals-Chiefs game, because we actually have here a bit of a response to a question before the game from Jamar Chase about what he was looking forward to against the Chiefs.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody knows that, bro. It's not no if. You know what I'm saying? We are the team to be in the AFC, and we know it, and we got to act like it, and we got to play like it too.
Really what I see from this, as he said, we're the team to be in the AFC, and there were a lot of comments about this. No, they're not, which, to be honest, I don't think they are.
I don't think they are either.
But they have that confidence. And I think that Joe Burrow, yes, I do think the risk is an issue. I do think that, in a way, some people overhype him, but he showed against the Chiefs, they're always close. They're not like the Ravens. They're not like the Bills. When they're playing the defending Super Bowl champions, they always have an opportunity to win. Every single game. They've never been blown out. They've either won or Patrick Mahomes has the ball to win the game. And I think that...
If I believe it or not, Joe Burrow is one of 3 quarterbacks that has beat Patrick Mahomes 2 or 3 times. And I think that is an even crazier fact for, you know, Burrow and Mahomes. I'm probably sure that Tom Brady is one of those other 3 quarterbacks. It takes a lot to beat Mahomes and the Chiefs. Like, he does a lot, and he shows, like, he's the face of that team. And, like, you know, you're not just coming here to beat me. You're beating everyone on this team.
And I think going back to Jamar's comments, especially with, you know, kind of the discourse and the conflict between his extension, which never happened. And on the field, how we got unsportsmanlike conduct, 15 yards, pretty detrimental to the drive. And as the leader, Burrow comes up to him and is like, chill. We got this. And even though they didn't win, I feel like I sensed a bit of conflict between Burrow and Chase because he wants the ball. And he's not getting paid what he wants. He wants to be the highest paid receiver. And even though some could say he should be, I don't think he should be. And I think, yes, he can say that they're teams to beat, but in my opinion, that's got to be Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase has not been on the field. Joe Burrow hasn't been in the last year, but Jamar Chase hasn't been in the field. And when he's been in the field, I think it's been inconsistent at times, especially early on in the year. And I think for the Bengals really to make this season their season and go deep into the playoffs like we knew they could 2 or 3 years ago, Jamar and Joe need to get on the same page.
I agree. They need to be like they were at LSU. They need to be that dynamic duo. I would hopefully like to see T. Higgins, obviously, get a contract. Not what's it called? What's the thing he's under right now called?
Like his rookie contract? Oh, T? The franchise tag.
The franchise tag.
Yeah.
I'd hope the Bengals figure that out soon. He's got this hamstring injury. Hopefully, he can be on the field this upcoming week. I think it's another target that Joe needs. I think T is very detrimental to the entire team. At times, I do believe T can be better than Jamar. And I remember watching T playing in college. He's an electric player. When you get him the ball, he can do great things. And the same thing is with Jamar. But everyone needs to be on the same page. You just lost your running back that you've had for a little over 7 years now, Joe Mixon. And as much as he, wanted to be there, they also lost Tyler Boyd, who's been on the team. He's a 10-year on the team. And losing those pieces obviously can make you a little go insane. And I'm sure Joe Burrow, was sad to see those pieces depart. But, they need to figure it out. They need to get together and they need to work it all out.
And I think for our final comments, I just have one question to ask you. You're turning 20 today. What does that feel? And what are you excited about?
Doesn't feel too different. Just excited to, got one more class today and we get to go on a little field trip, history of the Beatles. So I'm excited. And I'm just going to plan on hanging out with my friends. That's all I want to do. Love being around them. Just excited.
Amazing. And everyone, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of The Podium. Go listen wherever you find your podcast. The Podium. We're under IUSTV podcast. Thank you, everyone that made this happen. We're really looking forward to the future.